those who are watching this proceeding from those who are watching this proceeding from across the world, let me tell you that, let me welcome all of you on this Education Pe Charcha. This is educating the nation. My dear viewers, last time it was, on the eve of India's independence. If people can recall, it was on, on 14th evening. We had conducted this program with a global academician, Dr. Shri Deepak Jain sir. And just preceding to that, we had another global statesman, Shri V.S. Sampath sir, in fact, the greatest chief election commissioner of this country. Today, again, as we already promised you, gave you an irrevocable commitment that we are going to bring the people from myriad field of specializations. We have a dynamic police officer, an IPS, Shri Amitabh Thakur ji, who basically at a young age has got a myriad achievements to his credit. And my dear viewers, most of you who are watching this program, or you can say those who will eventually watch this particular program, will derive a lot of inspiration from his, from his action, from the discharge of his responsibilities as an Inspector General of Police in operations in Odisha. And since many of you, we see so many Hindi and whatever movies we see, I think that barely we forego or we skip seeing a police officer in his uniform. And today we have a genuine police officer who is going to spell out the vision of a police officer of the police department. And that is indeed a very, very welcome sign, a welcome learning opportunity for each one of us. And most importantly, I would like to just take you back to my own childhood days when I was in Kolkata, erstwhile Calcutta, because when I was in my sophomoric days, it used to be Calcutta, the city of joy, the city of Nobel laureates. I recall I was a student then. And I tell you, please, means there was a big, an assassination of a deputy police commissioner in Calcutta. He was Mr. Vinod Mehta at a very young age. And even while we were just students in our sophomoric days, his, bravery, his heroism had so much impressed all of us that we continue to talk about, let Shri Vinod Mehta ji for so many days together, because his bravery, he chased all the underworld dons, and while going through the tunnel, he was being surrounded by all mafias, and finally, he was killed, and one of his bodyguards too got killed. So I recall the bravery, the heroism of Vinod Mehta, even after decades, because he died on account of heroism and, achieved martyrdom for himself and brought glory to the nation. Today, we have, a wonderful man in a very young age. So, to grace and bless us, and it is Shri Amitabh Thakur ji. And one more thing I would like to say before we proceed ahead, that Shri Amitabh Thakur ji has a very, very illustrious father. His honorable father, Shri Tantra Narayan Thakur Sahab, Shri T.N. Thakur sir, whom I have had a great privilege, a divine privilege of portraying him, as a living legend of, in a pioneer book, The Living Legends of Mithila. Shri T.N. Thakur ji basically has been a power man of this country who had revolutionized India's power sector. So you can well understand, being an illustrious son of an illustrious father, we welcome Shri Amitabh Thakur ji for today's spectacular show. Let us know now, it is a time for all of us, my dear viewers, to have an insight into the persona of Shri Amitabh Thakur ji. Shri Amitabh Thakur qualified civil services in 1998 and was allotted Odisha cadre. His first posting was ASP, as that is Additional Superintendent of Police, Sambalpur, SDPO Jaleswar and Bhanjnagar. He was later posted as SP, Superintendent of Police, Behrampur, and then as Khurda. That is Bhubaneswar. After the Khuda it is in Bhubaneswar. After the introduction of the commissionerate system, he became the first DCP of Bhubaneswar, Deputy Commissioner of Police of Bhubaneswar, first DCP of Bhubaneswar. In the year 2008, he went to CBI on deputation, Central Bureau of Investigation on deputation. He has been elevated to Inspector General of Police in 2016. He has earned the number of laurels in the field of anti-Naxal operations as DIGP, that is Deputy Inspector General of Police, Inspector IGP, Inspector General of Police, Southern Range, Berhampur. He got dreaded Maoist Sabyasachi Panda arrested. He efficiently handled two major cyclones, that is Phailin and Hudhud, in 2013 and 2014. During his tenure as in Berhampur, he successfully handled car festival of Lord Shri Jagannath, Puri, Lord Shri Jagannath Puri, and Lord Shri Jagannath Puri. Yes. Also directly handled Cyclone Titli in 2018. He is the recipient of President's Police Medal, one of the most prestigious awards for any police officer, for meritorious service in the year 2016. Antrik Suraksha Seva Padak in the year 2017, and Governor's Police Medal in the year 2018, awarded DGP's disc in the year 2014-15. Now it is a time to invite Shri Amitabh Thakur ji. Amitabh ji, we welcome you for this grand education pe charcha, that is educating the nation.
My first thank you so much, and thank you so much for the kind words.
So nice of you, sir. Now the first question comes to me because I am unable to fathom or comprehend this very important, the so-called nomenclature, awarded DGP's disc in the year 2014-15. So what does this signify? What does this connote? Please, it is your take on this. That is disc, awarded DGP's disc, please.
Every head of the police institution, like the DGP of a state or a DGP of a central paramilitary force, they have award disc to those who have performed well in that particular year. Now, DGP Odisha also used to award DGP's disc. It used to be 50 in number, but as the force has multiplied over the years, now it has been increased to 100, which is from constable till the senior most rank. So DGP during the year, whoever has performed well or has has earned some achievement for himself and also for the police force, is awarded with the DGP's disc. So this was given to me in 2014-15 because of handling of cyclone. As I would want to inform everyone that Phailin was a super cyclone in which there were no casualties, and the Under Secretary General of the United Nations flew down from America to India only to felicitate our Chief Minister for efficient handling of cyclone, because at around the same time there were cyclones and typhoons in Philippines and England also, where there were many deaths. But in Odisha there were no deaths, and it was very successfully handled, and people were not subjected to any discomfort, or there was no loss of lives. So for this efficient handling, DGP gave me the disc.
Thank you so much, Amitabh ji. Now, actually, I know you had your school we don't know anything about your school education. Graduation from Sri Ram College of Commerce, and then your foray into the civil services. So kindly let us, just go down the memory lane, and please try to give us an insight into your sophomoric days. Then, of course, joining such a prestigious institute, Sri Ram College of Commerce, and finally, to your foray into civil service. So how do you, correlate all these, especially coming from a commerce background? You took a foray into the civil service. Your take on this, please.
Yeah, my father was a civil servant. I believe he belonged to the Indian Audits and Account Service, And as everybody, my father has been my role model all my life. And uh, uh, during his service days, we would travel with him wherever he would get posted. So I have had my school education at many places, starting from Ranchi, then Kolkata, then Bhubaneswar, then Delhi for about 6 years, and again finished off my schooling at Patna. Then I joined college. So I'm like, what everyone would think that maybe my father inspired me to join the civil services. In a way, yes, he did inspire me to join the civil services. But I would want to mention to everybody, I'm like, my father would have control. I'm like, that control was never visible. But whenever you would go to him that I'm going to do this, he would say, okay. So like he himself has been a mechanical engineer by education. And he very proudly had preserved one T. There's one, I don't know the name of the instrument, a T. So basically, he wanted one of us, like we three brothers, he wanted one of us to be an engineer. But as I said, that he never used to pressurize or force us to do anything, but he would always have an indirect control so that we don't go astray. So after completion of my 12th, when I said that I'm wanting to study economics, he said, okay, go. So I studied economics, then I did my PG and got into the civil services. Now, but he did inspire me, but he never forced me to get into any particular field. Like both my younger brothers, they're very far away from government. They're IIM graduates, and both of them are investment bankers. But I got into the civil services, and my father did inspire me, and he was my role model, which brought me here. And as you said that, how did, after studying economics, how did you land up in police? So the civil services, you appear, there's one common exam in which, based on your rank, you're allocated any service. So I was allocated Indian Police Service, and I was very happy about it. Joined the police service. So this is how the story goes.
Fantastic. Actually, as you mentioned about your honorable father, we know, with whom also I am very, thoroughly acquainted with. Actually, sir said to me one day while our interaction was going on, that one day he took you to Kirti Azad ji, because sir, which your
Yeah,
honorable
yeah,
father, he was a personal SAP, very means secretary to the then
yeah.
Chief Minister Sri Bhagwat Jha Azad. And so you went to have a meeting with Kirti Azad. So
Mm.
did not Mr. Kirti Azad impress you to be a cricketer?
So
Just,
I
just
tried, yeah, I tried my hands. Like, I mean, as I said, that my father would always have an indirect control, but he would never force us to do anything. So when I was in standard 9, I joined the national stadium. Kirti Azad, in fact, was coached by late Shri Guru Charan Singh. So he was the one who gave cricket coaching at the national stadium. So I had also gone and joined national stadium. And
sir.
yeah.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. So every morning, I'm like, we were staying in Ramakrishna Puram in Delhi. So every morning I would take a bus, go and play cricket whole day, and then come back in the evening. So just as when I was in the 10th standard, Bishan Singh Bedi had to hold a camp. So I also very badly wanted to be in the camp, because I thought that this would catapult me into the upper layers of cricketers. Somehow I could not make it to the camp. And then my mother was very crestfallen, very disappointed. So she mentioned this to Kirti Azad, and she said that Krishna di, ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि अमित का नहीं हुआ होगा, उसको ठीक से नहीं देखा होगा. So he said that you come and you join the camp. But then my father put his foot in, and he said that, I mean, if you're not good enough for this, try your hands at something else. So I mean, I did try my hand. I could not succeed. I could not make it to the next stage.
Thanks a lot for this revelation. Actually, your experience, we would like to know, because my viewers, most of whom are civil service aspirants, would like to know about your experience as ASPs, Sambalpur, SDPO, Jaleswar and Vanjnagar.
Bhanjanagar, yeah.
Bhanjnagar. So your experience in these different capacities, please, your
Yeah.
take on this.
So when we joined the police services, we are sent for a foundation course, which is at Masuri or any other academy. So this is a combined foundation course for all services put together. After that, we are trained at the National Police Academy for a period of 10 months. When we were there, it used to be for a period of 10 months. And then you have your various attachments with the defense forces, with the Central Armed Police Forces, and then with the CBI and other institutions. And then you're sent for on-the-field training. This is the time when I was in Sambalpur. I was assistant superintendent of police, and I was trained in Sambalpur district. After completion of your training, you again go back to the academy for your phase 2 of training. So I finished that phase 2 of training. Then I was posted. My first posting was as sub-divisional police officer. Now, sub-divisional police officer is the next stage of the SHO. I believe he is the immediate boss of the SHO. So the inspector in charge of a police station reports to the sub-divisional police officer. So this is your the junior most police posting for any IPS officer. Here, it's a mini version of holding charge of a district. You're holding charge of a subdivision, and you're responsible for everything that goes on in your subdivision. This is very challenging because you're new, you're immature, but you gain in experience as you move ahead in your career, and a very challenging period of life.
Okay, so Amitabh, one thing I would like to know, in fact, our viewers would also like to know, SDPO basically in charge of how many police stations, at a time?
But it depends on the size of the subdivision. Now, as a subdivisional police officer of Jaleshwar subdivision, I was in charge of 6 police stations. And then when I went to Bhanjanagar subdivision had 10 police stations. And Bhanjanagar was a very challenging subdivision. That's been reserved for an IPS officer for many years now. In fact, the first SDPO of Bhanjanagar subdivision was in the year 1936, when a Britisher was the subdivisional police officer. So very rich legacy of that particular subdivision, and a big subdivision. So basically the size of the subdivision will matter when on how many police stations are there in that subdivision.
Okay. So your experience as a SP of Behrampur and then as Khurda. So could you please let us know something about experience as a superintendent of police when you are presiding over the destiny of the entire police force of a particular district? Your unique experience, in the capacity of SP, of course, would add value to all our civil service aspirants. Please, your take on this.
Yeah, as superintendent of police Berhampur, but that was my first district, and is eager to make a mark for himself or herself in their career. So that was a very difficult district in the sense that the assembly constituency of the Honorable Chief Minister was in Berhampur district, and when I was SP Berhampur, our DGP who was there for 3 years, his hometown was also Berhampur district. So every month I would have some VIP visiting Berhampur district. So even though a small district with only 11 police stations, but it was a very challenging district. After that, when I moved on to Khurda, in fact, like Berhampur would have probably be the reason why I was posted as Khurda, because at Berhampur I would interact with the DGP and Honorable Chief Minister on a very regular basis. So, Khurda district was, had now it's no more the size of the district what it used to be when I was there. Because Khurda, Bhubaneswar in itself is not a district. So Bhubaneswar comes under Khurda district. So when I was posted as SP Khurda, I succeeded a very illustrious officer of Odisha cadre, 8 years my senior, who is still revered today. So it was, for me, it was very big shoes to fill. And then I mean, being the state capital, being the SP of the state capital has its own challenges, has its own whatever, like the benefits as well. So Khurda district had 28 police stations, and like Bhubaneswar itself was challenging, but beyond Bhubaneswar also, the present day Khurda district, which is outside the commissionerate, is still considered to be a very challenging district. So you can imagine that the present day SP Khurda plus DCP Bhubaneswar used to be the erstwhile Khurda district. So but there things were well, like I had my own ups and downs there, and by the grace of God, I could arrest all the dreaded criminals of Odisha. If you talk of Sheikh Haider, who was recently killed in an encounter with the police, or Anil Chotrai, or Suleiman, or Tito, everyone, I had arrested everyone there. But then, I mean, as I said, that I had my own ups and lows. But these people were arrested because they were major crimes. So whenever they would commit a crime, I would go through sleepless nights. So I would want to narrate one incident here. There were very very controversial murders in quick succession. After somebody was murdered in the evening, within 10 days of that, there were two murders during daytime, right in the heart of the capital. So this being the capital, when Honorable CM called me and he said that, how long can I have, where can I be seeing bloodshed on the streets of Bhubaneswar? So this really, like, it was a jolt from the blue, but it made me determined to somehow go and arrest whoever was behind this. So when I walked down from Honorable Chief Minister's chamber in the Secretariat, there was this scores of journalists waiting there. So they kept asking me what transpired. I said nothing. I had gone to discuss some issues. So what the issues pertaining to the murders, I simply smiled. So the next day headlines in the vernacular press was Ashant Shahar Ka Shant SP.
Okay.
So these were the times, but by the grace of God, like all these criminals, whoever was responsible for any of the crimes, were arrested, and that earned me a very good name. And but being at any such place has its own sets of challenges and own sets of whatever, like, so one has to overcome. All you have to do is to be determined and maintain your cool.
Thanks a lot, Amitabh ji. Actually, the moment you are narrating about such a unique experience of yours, instantly, some sort of conversation I have had in the past with another Mr. Amitabh Chaudhary, another IPS from Ranchi. He also told me all the same thing as what you narrated to our viewers. He made Ranchi free from criminals. I have also portrayed him in the Living Legends of Mithila. So I have portrayed the details. Thanks a lot. And just now, actually, it just struck me. Amitabh ji, you were presiding over the police force of a district in the capacity of superintendent of police. Many of our viewers who are civil service aspirants would like to know the tensions, the undercurrent of tensions that often crops up between superintendent of police and the district magistrate, that is IS and IPS, because there is always some sort of one-upmanship, there is some sort of ego clash and all that. So how did you manage it when you were promoted as an SP? Did you ever have some sort of conflict with the district magistrate there, some ego clash, some sort of resistance here and there? Please tell us how you managed that tricky situation, especially when the equation with the collector would not have been that smooth. Please let us know, give us some exposure about it.
As far as functioning of the district is concerned, the district magistrate is the head. Like, he presides over all the issues concerning the district. So he's also responsible for the law and order. So it all depends on how is your relationship with the district collector. Like, I would not say that I never had any friction with the district magistrates. I worked with 3 of them. But 99% of the time, I had the best of relationship, because whenever, like when I joined my first district, fortunately for me, the collector had also joined as collector district magistrate on that very day. And we had been friends before that. So we joined as friends, and we would talk it out whenever there was any friction. Once he had written a letter to me. And so then I just walked down to his place. I said that, भाई अगर आप ये लिखेंगे तो एक स्टेनो दूसरे स्टेनो को लिख रहा है, and why should we spoil a relationship? So and he understood. He understood. So you have to somehow work your way around. But I would not say that there have been people who never had any problems. I had my own share of problems. There have been other district SPs who had greater problems with the collectors. I mean, in some districts, even the chief secretary and the DGP had to intervene. So, but fortunately for me, I mean, the three collectors I worked with, one was, of course, a very dear friend. The other two were senior members in the service, but very affectionate. The collector of Khurda, so whenever we would go for any meeting, he would come and sit in my car, and then I would ask him, why, let's go and sit in your car. He said, no, if I sit in your car, I'll get recognized by every traffic constable. So whenever I travel alone, he said that he was going for some meeting with the chief secretary. So the chief secretary was very surprised when every traffic constable was saluting him. He said, you're a very popular district magistrate, I must say, because every traffic constable is saluting you. He said, it's not because of that. It's only because of the fact that I've been traveling with the SP all the time that they recognize me. So this is how when one has to work. There are given set of rules, and you have to abide by the rules. It all depends on how you use them, how you work with them, which determines your relationship with interpersonal relationship. And maybe I had the best of times because of the wonderful human beings and wonderful officers that all three gentlemen were. But it's best to go and talk it out in case you feel something. If there is any friction, talking out is the best thing. I mean, like, had I replied to his letter by another letter, things would have maybe things would have been different. But I just walked up to him and I said that please desist from doing any such thing. And that was it. I was like, we were there for 2 years and 10 months. We got transferred on the same day also. Neither did he write, nor did I write. So best way is to talk it out. And there may be difficult persons, there may be some very wonderful persons, but whatever it is, I mean, you have to set your interpersonal relationship right. And whenever there is good communication, there isn't any problem. That's what I have learned so far in about 23 years of service.
But Amitabh, there is some sort of tricky, means a tricky situation where you have to be very meticulous in terms of negotiating with it, because this ego problem is bound to crop up. Although both collectors as well as SP are from the civil service, but nevertheless, collector, means some sort of one-upmanship, some sort of superiority complex syndrome is bound to crop up. It might not never have cropped up with you, but it is a more or less a very natural scenario. Is not it that in district magistrate finally, he will have the final say, whereas the collector, SP would think that no, the solution would be other way around. So that is some sort of class is inevitable. Is not it? Your take on this?
It is. I'm like, but you're absolutely right. You've hit the nail on its head when you say so, because I mean, the collector is also responsible for development, and the SP is responsible for the law and order. Now, whenever Odisha has seen a lot of development over the past 20 years, over the past 2 decades. So whenever you have any industries or for that matter, any developmental initiative of the government being taken up, that also involves some displacement of people, some relocation of people, and also some tough decisions to be taken. So all this invites a lot of public protests. In Berhampur, falls under Ganjam district. So in Berhampur, in the year, I think it was 99, much before I joined as SP, this Tata steel plant was to come up. And when the land acquisition was taking place, there was difference of opinion between the collector and the SP, because the SP obviously wanted proper relief and proper rehabilitation package for all the displaced persons. Eventually, collector also, and the collector and SP got onto the same page. But then, because of the protests, there was firing, and one inspector died in that law and order problem, and there were other deaths also. So when I took over as SP Barampur, this Tata issue kept continuing. Now, as an SP, I would always want that best possible package for the people who are losing their land, people who are losing their livelihood. So, and collector would want that with minimum of friction, with minimum of expenditure of the government, the industry should come up. So these are very tricky situations. And then, as I said, that if you talk with one another, if you try and convince him, or he convinces you, then ultimately you have to, unless the SP and the collector are on the same page, things would be difficult. Things would be very different. Now, I'll narrate another incident of this Khurda district. So this was around the Shivratri festival. Shivratri festival was going on. And then at a place which was about 70 kilometers away from Bhubaneswar, we got information about some caste wars, and then some houses were burnt. So I immediately asked the collector to come with me. I said that we have to go there, and whatever has happened, we'll book the people responsible for it. But then we have to kind of settle it. So collector initially was hesitant. He said that if we go now, things could be different, because both of us belong to a particular caste, and this is a caste war. I said that if we go, and if we are seen working there for the people, things would be very different. You believe in me and you come. He was still hesitant, and then somehow he got convinced, and we went there. But we were greeted by lots of slogan shouting. But once they saw that these people mean business, they're here for the betterment of everybody here. So things settled down, and things settled down very quickly. So within half an hour, we could start our restoration of the houses which are burned down, and we could start a shelter, start serving food to the people. And then the same people who were shouting slogans against the administration, not against any particular individual, against the administration, carried us on their shoulders. So then the collector said that you were absolutely right. Had we not come, it would have been very difficult to restore normalcy here. So it happens. So one has to take a decision, and if the conviction is right, the decision would always be right. If you go listen to your heart and put your experience behind it, things should be good. That's all.
Amitabh ji, just now you mentioned about decision making. Since especially in the, when you are holding the position of say a superintendent of police, or even at a higher rank, say for example, today you are Inspector General. So, means say some sort of violence, unexpected violence, unceremonious violence breaks out. And, that also of a, larger magnitude. So in that case, supposedly, if whatever decision you take on the spur of the moment, if it is not compatible with a solution, if it is not compatible with the peculiarity of the violence breaking out, then, if the things go in a state of disarray, what I mean to say is not the way you thought about it. So what is the consequence? The consequence may be very drastic. It might be very adverse. So how should a district collector, how should a superintendent of police, or say for that matter, anyone holding the higher police position, how would he negotiate with such volatility of situation so that he eventually comes out unscathed, and at the same time he takes care of the situation, or his best of intention to take care of situation might not have come the way he thought, the way he planned? How should he deal with that tricky situation then? Because decision making plays a very pivotal part. You may not have any precedent of that situation, and you are taking a decision on the spur of the moment, which might not be appreciated by a higher authority, even by the political class, then how should a police officer try to come unscathed and negotiate with this sort of tricky situation? Your take on this?
Uh, I'll narrate two of my experiences to explain the issue. I mean, answer your question. A very pertinent question and a very tricky one also at the same time. When I was SP Khurda, assembly session was going on. So during the assembly session, I was all your forces are deployed at the assembly for security of honorable MLAs, as well as during the assembly session, you have most of the dharnas, processions going on. So you have to deploy forces for that. But once you deploy all these forces, your resources in your hand actually thins down to the last person. So was the case with me. And earlier, the assembly in the sessions in Bhubaneswar used to go on till 10, 11 at night. So that on that particular day went past 11 o'clock, and by the time I could reach my reserve police line, it was well past midnight. Around that time, one of my inspector in charge gave me a call saying that because of some issue between a boy and a girl, so villagers of one particular village are marching towards the other village, and in the other village, all the male persons have disappeared because they're lesser in number, and the village is smaller in size. So you need to send me force, otherwise they'll simply burn all the houses, they'll kill all the old people who are there, all the women and children are there. Now, as I said, that my resources, I had absolutely none in my hand. I've been completely thinned down. So I took my PSO, my driver, and whoever I could get. So we went there. When we reached to this smaller village, we were hardly but 9 persons in all. And we saw a crowd of more than 1,000 people coming, and all of them were angry, they were agitated, and they were in a mood to take action, whatever they could. So I immediately asked all my people that we just have 3 vehicles. So they would know that there aren't many policemen here to protect the smaller village. So we need to strategize. So immediately we put the 3 vehicles in at 3 distant places, and all 9 of us we spread. And then I said that every 2-3 minutes we'll need to fire in the air. So first we said we started shouting on the loud hailer, asking them to stop. Otherwise, we would have to resort to action, police action. They would not pay any heed to our advice. So ultimately, I said that let's fire in the air, and that's what we did. So this gave us the precious time when all the older people, the men, women, and the women and children, all of them could leave the village and go out. And this also gave us time for the fire brigade to come in. So by the time the people realized that there aren't any policemen, we could do this. And once they saw that we were hardly 9 of us, they actually marched into the village and they burned out 2-3 houses. But since the fire brigade was there, the fire was put out immediately. So this particular decision that we should try and stop them, and first we should rescue and move away all the whoever are the inhabitants in the village, could save every precious life. Not even a single life was lost, and only 3 houses were damaged. But yes, next morning, when there were officers in my department who were very critical of me, saying that you should always keep some force handy with you. Like, you should have gone and fired at the people. If there were 1 or 2 dead bodies, nobody would have come forward, and 2-3 houses also would not have been burned. So it's a decision that you take. I mean, it's a decision that you make at the spur of the moment. I made that decision, but I think that that was the correct decision since no lives were lost. Another thing is during the winter assembly session, teachers in large numbers were on dharna, and that particular was very cold in Bhubaneswar. So on the second day, when the temperature actually went down to about, it never does in Bhubaneswar, to about 5-6 degrees. So I thought that, I mean, since about 5-7,000 teachers are there on the road and without any shelter, they if something happens to any one of them, it would be very difficult to control the situation. So I called up my DGP and I requested him that, sir, I mean, there has to be some meeting with the minister in charge, or if higher person also intervenes, because there's some intervention on the part of the government is required. So he gave me the go ahead, and I went to the CM's office, and then I explained the situation to the principal secretary of the CM, and he understood. I said, sir, like, I'm not talking about the demands of the teachers. They may be just, they may not be just, but the fact remains that even if something happens to one of the teachers, things might just go haywire. And he agreed, and he spoke with the Honorable Chief Minister. And at the around midnight, 1 a.m. To be very precise, a cabinet meeting was held. And almost everyone who was part of the cabinet was very bitter with me. I mean, they were swearing at me. But that kind of like, immediately after the cabinet meeting, no demands were met. All we came and said that because of, for you, the government has held a cabinet meeting at 1 a.m. at night, and things would be discussed. All of you dispersed. They actually dispersed. So you have to like anticipate also, because law and order depends on your how you evaluate the situation and how you anticipate. When sets of teachers would not indulge in any violence, but if you have some other group, they may probably behave differently. So basing on all these things, you take a decision, and you always pray to God that you made the right decision.
Thanks a lot, Amitabh, and my viewers, you must have heard that how calibrated the decision was. And even though it infuriated all the cabinet ministers, but nevertheless, the nail was hit, absolutely means on head, and the matter was resolved. So, the capacity of a police officer of such a high stature, sometimes on the spur of the moment, whatever decisions are being taken, that of course might cause some sort of consternation, some sort of adverse might have some adverse implication, but nevertheless all is well, that ends well. And how that he dispelled that particular crisis, how the crisis was blown over, that shows that even at such a young age, his overall talent is something which needs a proper which needs a salutation. Now, Amitabh, I'm coming to the next question, and it might sound a bit sound bitter to you, but this is a fact. Why police, despite being the custodian of law and order, is feared rather than respected? Why we Chandrachud, the Supreme Court Chief Justice, in course of a particular judgment by way of an obiter dicta, he had made this particular observation. I am quoting the Chief Justice, and it is not my comment. It is his comment, which I am quoting here, recapitulating what he said by way of, again I say, obiter dicta. He said that police are the most criminal men. So how do you justify or refute the former Chief Justice comment, even though it was by way of an obiter dicta, but it is more or less, the reflection of ground reality. I am not saying that it happens in Odisha, but it is the more or less the general perception. So how do you, dispel it, or how do you what is your stand on this? Please, your say on this.
Justice Chandrachud is one of the most respected person, and I have the highest respect for him. But whenever you're passing a judgment, you're passing based on one incident, or maybe on a couple of incidents. So maybe in that particular incident, police would have indulged in some excesses, and not which would not have been in conformity of law. I would not say that they don't transgress. We do transgress. There are many. There are black sheeps everywhere. There are black sheeps in police as well. We do transgress. We do commit excesses. But the general perception about the police, like I myself, I'm like my father's brother-in-law, my father's sister was married to a police officer. So as a child, I would never go inside their home if he was in his uniform. So like, and that was the impression I had about the police. But once I joined the police, I was like, you have to appreciate one thing, that who goes to the police station? Anybody who has who has been like some crime has been committed on him, or maybe who has had some difficulty. I mean, it's not as if you're going to the block development officer for this ration card, or you're going to the tehsildar for your land patta. You're going to the police station when you're in distress. You've been there has been some mishap with you. There are many cases. I mean, like almost all the cases are one person A versus person B. So you register the case, you conduct your investigation, and basing on that investigation, you either submit the charge sheet, or you declare the case as false, or declare the case as mistake of law. So you're only satisfying one strata of the society, the strata in whose favor your decision has gone. So at the same time, I mean, the other person does feel aggrieved unless he's convinced about your investigation, which seldom is. He's aggrieved. So you, at a given point of time, you can only convince about 50% of the population of your intent, your action being fair, and you going strictly abiding by the law. Secondly, what happens is that many a times any policeman on the road indulges in visible action. As in, suppose somebody is assaulting another person, or if someone is committing any crime. So at the spur of the moment, in the in his enthusiasm, he actually goes and assaults the person. And that is recorded. That is recorded because everyone sees a man in uniform assaulting somebody. Everyone sees a man in uniform indulging in something which is not in accordance with law, which is not in conformity of law. So this kind of makes it very difficult for the policemen. I would narrate one incident here. Mr. Neeraj Gupta, who was was with the CBI. He was Commissioner of Police of Delhi, and a very respected person. So when he was in CBI, he was investigating all the underworld cases. Now, in Mumbai, you have instances where somebody is your tenant and he refuses to give you rent, he refuses to vacate the building. Now, who do you go to? I mean, if you go to the police, it is not within your jurisdiction to intervene in this matter. And if the police doesn't listen, I mean, if somebody with a criminal bent of mind is your tenant, how do you take him out? I mean, the judicial process will involve a lot of time. So then he said that these people would go, if the police would not listen to them, would go to the underworld, would go to a bigger gunda to get their house or flat, the tenant evicted. So police in many cases, not to allow these bigger gundas to come into the picture, would transgress law. Now the tenant who has been evicted will never have kind words for the police. So these things affect the morale of the police. I mean, a traffic policeman taking 5 rupees, 10 rupees on the road is noticed by everybody. So these dents the image of the police. But at the same time, I'm like, the society is peaceful, you have security everywhere, is because of the police. And I'm like, we have already a 75-year-old country now, 74 years plus country now. So since everyone is convinced with the action of the police, with the police organization, that is why the police is there.
Thanks a lot, Amitabh. Then actually, you also were on deputation in CBI. So just now you mentioned about the CBI. So basically, your work in Odisha in the capacity, in the various capacities, and then your deputation with the CBI. So how do you differentiate both of them? And about your unique experience with the CBI, our viewers would like to know. Please kindly, if you could just throw light on your tenure with the CBI, please.
CBI is one of the elite institutions of the country, elite organization, where when anything is not detected by the other police forces, the cases are handed over to over to the CBI. So as far as your investigation is concerned, not only investigation, even the judicial process post charge sheeting of the case is concerned, that you have CBI is the best organization. So that's a very highly skilled job. Whereas when you're the district SP, you're still investigating cases, you're still guiding investigation of cases, you're still detecting crimes. But at the same time, you're involved with so many other things. And you're also responsible for organizing all the trades and fairs and religious festivals. You're responsible for all the law and order. You're responsible for the security of all the VIPs, whoever has been given one by the state. In the CBI, it's a highly technical job, and whatever you take in hand, I mean, that has to be successfully completed, and the best possible, like we are the CBI is the counterpart of Scotland Yard, so the best possible investigation has to be done, and it has to be done in a manner that stands the test of law, and that stands the scrutiny of the courts. Then only you'll you'll earn a conviction. So these on a scale of 1 to 10, if you in the district, detection and investigation of cases would take about say 50% of your time, but in CBI it's 100%. So that has to be in the best possible manner possible.
Amitabh ji, you actually had a very close friendship with Sushant Singh Rajput, the late actor. So basically, you know, I would just like to ask you a very important question, because many of the youth are watching the program live, and of course, many of the youth will definitely watch it eventually. Your close friendship with Sushant Singh Rajput and I myself had the privilege of watching the movie Mahendra Singh Dhoni, because he played the role of Mahendra Singh Dhoni. Means he was the central protagonist. Now, I would like to know that despite his very high career growth, high, he was going very high in his career. Why did he succumb, or what made him succumb to all such earthly temptation, or rather he chose the path, the direction, the trajectory, which ought not to have been the trajectory of such an actor who was virtually he was almost on the accelerator. He was going very high, but all of a sudden he just he lost track and finally ended up as a casualty of all sort of evil things that you have in our society. So how did you know him? How did you how did you assess his overall life, and finally meeting a very unpalatable sort of end? So your say on your friend's career prospect, as well as just meeting the end in a very implausible and unpalatable manner. Your take on this, which is very going to be very important, because you enjoyed a very close relationship with him.
Yeah, I would like to inform everybody. I'll not talk about the nuances or the details of the investigation of the case, because the investigation is still on. But I'll just talk about the person, what a wonderful person he was. I'm like, my wife used to tie Rakhi to him. When Sushant, he had 5 sisters. He was the youngest. He was the 6th sibling. He was the youngest sibling. One sister, of course, passed away very early in life. So 4 of them are still there. And my wife, there are only 3 sisters. So for 7 sisters, he was the only brother. So this was the bonding. Now, as far as Sushant is concerned, he was a brilliant student. He qualified into Delhi Institute of Technology, and he was studying there. After that, he took the decision of joining the film to get into movies and to join the television and the film industry. So, he was intellectually a very bright person. When I got married, he used to possess one telescope then, and he would explain to me the constellations in the sky. And he was in 10th standard then, like a very young boy. when he came to Mumbai, he did everything on his own. I'd be like, of course, and the family support is always there, but he was not part of, like, none in his family was part of the film industry. So he made it on his own. Got into movies. I mean, his second movie was a this Yash Raj movie. So he had done very good movies. Chichore made about 300 crores for him. And at the time when he, like, this unfortunate incident happened, but he had 7 movies in his hands. So he was doing very well. He was intellectually a brilliant person. So God knows what happened, but I don't think that for lack of work or for any such reason this would have happened, because he had 7 movies in his hands and he was working with the best banners and he was doing very well. I believe his acting was appreciated by one and all. So but let's wait for the investigation to conclude, and then we'll get a picture of that. Uh, yes, I'm like, whatever is coming out in the media is, I'm like, uh, for everyone to read, but let's not go too much into that. As a professional film actor, he was doing very well. He had good movies in his hands, and his work was being appreciated by all.
Thanks a lot, Amitabh ji, for your insight into a very very important case, or rather such a case which virtually means put the entire nation, or rather pricked the national conscience, and of course it gave us some sort of tremor to the entire country, because as you very correctly said, I also had the privilege of watching his Mahendra Singh Dhoni's biopic, where he acted really marvelously. And that is why, beside the point as to what eventually will come out of the investigation, but I do recall his acting in such a brilliant fashion. As you very correctly described, his very appearance indeed was giving an intellectual look, intellectual flavor, had all sort of luster of being an intellectual. But then most importantly, what exactly why I ask you this question, because it really worried me that a man who was almost flying high in his career graph, and who had everything under the sun, why such a tragic tragedy happened. This is what exactly was a matter of concern. Investigation is on, as you said, so of course truth will come out. Amitabh, we just want to know, because many, as we already know, that many of the civil service aspirants are watching this particular program. You are an IPS officer, you are going brilliantly, and from this special education pe Charcha, I would like to wish you all in advance, because your very face reveals a sort of modesty which is unusual of an police officer or IPS officer. I remember, I would like to inform you, if because since you also may be knowing, in Calcutta we had a very decent face of police officer, Mr. Nirupam Som. Very long time back, he was the police commissioner of Calcutta, and a very decent man. Used to command a lot of respect. Likewise, when I see your face, I'm sure if people would not know about your police background, nobody would vouch for it that you are a police officer. God has given you, but indeed, that I don't mean to say that being a police officer and being gentle don't go together. That is not my point. But this is the general perception. So, Amitabh ji, actually, you qualified the civil service after graduating from, that is Siram College of Commerce, a very esteemed college known across the country. So please let know just some message for the aspirants, civil service aspirants, as to how they should prepare, how those, especially those who are looking forward to police job, to become an IPS officer. What is your special message to them? Please, Amitabh ji, your take on this, your special message.
But everyone should set a goal for himself or herself, and you have to be absolutely committed towards that. A couple of years ago, the boy who topped in the IIT JEE entrance, so he said that once I passed my 10th standard, I decided to be off social media and only keep studying. So it made him top in the examinations. As I had mentioned earlier, two of my younger brothers, both of them are IIM graduates, investment bankers. It's not as if I did not try to get into any of the management institutions, but I could not. I mean, and the reason being that when I was preparing for the entrance examinations, you will see that the questions which are there in mathematics or English, I believe, offhand you can solve all of them. But the real test is that you have to solve about 240 questions in 120 minutes. So it's the pressure of the situation and the speed and the agility that is required in solving the questions is what matters. So for that, when my younger brothers would take three tests a day, I sit tight in a room for 2 hours and prepare accordingly, which I did not do. But then I corrected my mistake. So when I was preparing for the civil services, I would get up early in the morning. My father would wake me up at about 3:45 a.m. and mother would be ready with tea at 4 a.m. And I would study. And I would do nothing else apart from that. In the evenings, I used to go out for a walk. So one has to be absolutely committed. When we were students, there weren't as many distractions which are there today. But every student who is there who's listening to this, you have to slog for 2-3 years if you want to make it very big. You set your target and please cut out on all distractions. When social media is fine, TV is fine, but then if you're aiming at something for 2-3 years, that should be your bread and butter and nothing else. I mean, all you should do, think, sleep, and breathe is whatever is the goal that you have set for yourself. Basically, I mean, the purpose, determination, commitment has to be there, and it has to be there in very large quantity. I mean, 1 minute of distraction means that it's not as if we are all humans. We cannot switch on and switch off just like that. If you go out for a movie with your friends in the evening, when you come back, you keep thinking about the movie. So it's better for 2 years, for 3 years, forget about everything else and just be committed to your purpose.
So thanks a lot, Amitabh ji. Actually, all the viewers, especially the civil service aspirants, you got a message very, in a distinctive form, in an unambiguous form, very crystal clear way, that all sort of preoccupation will have to be given up and exclusive focus would be on education, because what Swami Vivekananda said, arise, awake and stop not till your goal is reached. That is what our honored guest today, one of the brilliant IPS officers at such a young age, is trying to convey to all of you, that must be heeded in both letter and spirit. Amitabh, the last question I would like to ask you, because I know I'm conducting this session from Simla. Light has suddenly gone. It never happens, but it has happened unceremoniously. So Amitabh ji, last question I would like to know. You conducted lot of operations, that Naxal operation, which indeed, anybody, even the layman knows it is very, very dangerous, because you are going into the Naxal's den. It might have any consequence, even the adverse consequence. So each time you went for such an operation, combing operation. So what sort of, did you ever suffer from some sort of palpitation, some sort of thought that, it is that possibly it might not be that plausible, but might be not palatable, something of that that sort of thought must have struck you? So what exactly was the the sort of thought process while going for this Naxal operation? Could you please share with all our viewers?
Yeah, well, I myself don't go out on operations, but every operation that is carried out in the state is after the approval of the operations headquarters. In fact, yesterday, Honorable Chief Minister was in Malkangiri, which is a highly Maoist infested district. And the reason why I had traveled all the way to Malkangiri, so that everything goes off without any hitch, without any cliches. But whenever we conduct an operation, we have one strategic command center which keeps monitoring the movement of the teams. And because what happens is that most of these areas do not have any mobile connectivity. So you are concerned about the well-being of your team members. So we also give them satellite phones. But every time we conduct an operation, when you do have your heart in your mouth, and till everyone comes back safely to the headquarters, like we we rest assured. Uh, Whenever in the dead of the night or early morning, if the SP gives you a call and he says that sir, exchange of fire ho gaya, the first question that comes out is that हमारे सब लड़के safe हैं, हमारे सब लड़के ठीक हैं. This is the first thing that you ask. I don't know. I don't know whether I'll ever be cool about the entire situation. As far as my operations, I'll have my heart in my mouth every time when an operation is conducted.
So nice of you, Amitabh ji. Actually, dear viewers, you have heard a young, dynamic police officer. At such a young age, he has been efficiently conducting his duty, diligently discharging his responsibility. He has already earned the faith of the Honorable Chief Minister of Odisha, Shri Naveen Patnaik Sahab, as he has already mentioned, in course of times, how Chief Minister, he had dealt directly with the Chief Minister, and Chief Minister has a lot of confidence in him. Amitabh ji, from this August platform of the Education Pe Charcha, we all wish you all the very best, that at the you be, by the grace of divine, you will definitely become the youngest Director General of Police of Odisha. This is the best wishes we are extending to you, because you are pride for all of us. Son of such an illustrious man, Shri T.N. Thakur sir, we all extend the best wishes to you. My dear viewers, I would also like to make an announcement. The next Saturday, we have got another great, host, a great honored guest whom we are going to invite is Brigadier Dr. Shri Khanna sir. He has been an excellent brigadier, the man who fought for India in the war of liberation war, that is 1971, and how he earned laurels for India. All that we are going to understand, going to learn, going to know from him on next Saturday. But today we have had a wonderful session from Sri Amitabh Thakur ji, as such a brilliant young Indian police officer, and he gave us an insight into the overall holistic picture of the police force in the country today. We could have our time is up. We could have even asked him some questions, but because I already explained to you my predicament, because light all of a sudden has gone out, and therefore, even though the time is also up, we thank you, Amitabh ji, from the core of my heart, because
Thank
you
so
graced us and you illuminated all of us at such a young age, the sort of modesty, the sort of gentility, the sort of decency that you are, you are epitomizing, you are personifying. That gives us an impression as to what exactly the person that you are. That is a man, we want police officers like you, because that would convey a very positive impression about the police force, to the general mass. Because as you yourself confessed that how at your childhood age you would try to avoid your own relative, because you feared the very concept of being or rather the specter of someone being a police officer. This sort of perception has to be dispensed with, and we need to have a very positive outlook, a positive impression about the police force. I would like to say one thing before we conclude such a electrifying session with such a dynamic police officer.
I'll just mention, I'll take half a minute.
Sir.
In one of the operations, we had an exchange of fire with the Maoists. Now, the Maoists who were firing at the police forces got injured. One of them got injured, and he put his hands up. Now, you can imagine that any other person would have killed him there and then. But the same police person on whom he was on whom this Maoist was firing, carried him on his shoulder to safety, brought him to the hospital, and that the Maoist is fine now. So, policemen are very good human beings, very nice human beings, and this is the impression I want to give to all.
So nice of you, sir. Actually, Amitabh ji says this is, of course, correct. Even in police force, we have got such good people. We mentioned, you have seen, the very example by the grace of God, while we are bidding goodbye, light is restored. So basically, what I would say, in the conclusion, which is very, very important to sum up the entire interview with such a dynamic young police officer. Basically, why, let me tell you, share with all of you, my dear viewers, why I chose and I requested Shri, I requested Shri Amitabh Thakur ji to be a part and parcel of this particular bandwagon, because while in course of some of my conversation with him, I found him an excellent communicator. Let me tell you, there are many police officers, many IS officers I have seen, I keep on interacting. They are not good communicators. But as Sri Amitabh Thakurji is concerned, I found him a very great communicator, and therefore I just renewed my request several times that we welcome you for this show, and so benignly he has graced it. And most importantly, he failed to say, and let me share with all of you that he came up very, he was with the Honorable Chief Minister, supervising his overall security affairs. But then he had to move away from there as quickly as he could to be a part of this bandwagon. And the way he enlightened us, sir, I tell you, we have been enlightened by all your illuminating, enlightening experience that you shared with all the intellectuals, all the, the civil service aspirants. I'm sure everyone would have, benefited from this great session. So therefore, sir, we request, we once again thank you from the core of my heart, and of course wish you that someday again we will welcome you, and if you could give us time later, we would have another session with you. With these words, I thank all my viewers for this electrifying, for watching, being a part of the bandwagon of Education Pe Charcha with one of the finest young brilliant IPS officers of Odisha, who has been guiding, supervising the police force. And that how beautifully, how articulate he was in terms of narrating his own experience for the good of all the viewers. So therefore, we have had a wonderful session. Thank you, sir. We are returning all of you back again on next Saturday. We'll meet with another giant in military, that Brigadier Dr. Shri B. Khanna. Again, thank you. Good night. Good night. Thank you, Amitabh ji, for being part of this great proceeding. Thank you, sir. Thank you.